For the titans of the Gilded Age, the place to be in the summer was not Fifth Avenue in New York or the Champs-Élysées in Paris. Instead, the coveted summer address was along Bellevue Avenue in Newport, Rhode Island. To escape the heat, wealthy families from New York, Boston, and Philadelphia chose Newport as the place to see and be seen. The city by the sea gained favor as a popular summer getaway due to its mild climate and million-dollar ocean views. Here, American millionaires sought to outshine each other at balls, banquets, carriage parades, concerts, and sporting events, among many other entertainments. Newport became the place to spend the summer for members of the 400, the rich, and those social climbers who wanted to be accepted among the right people. That was especially true after William Backhouse Astor Jr. and his wife Caroline purchased Beechwood in 1881. With that, Newport became the place for the old money to summer, and the new money quickly followed. In the 40-year period between 1870 and 1910, hundreds of large summer homes were built in what had long been a relatively quiet and elegant summer outpost. The who's who of high society built spectacular summer mansions modeled after European palaces. The owners of these grand estates referred to them as cottages, but don't let the name fool you. Some had over 50 rooms and could accommodate large numbers of guests. The Newport mansions were built to make a statement about wealth and status, and no expense was spared in constructing the palatial properties. The architectural one-upmanship included manicured gardens, extensive collections of art, ornate ballrooms, and the latest in modern technology: electricity, running water, ice makers, telephones, and in-home intercom systems to call upon their servants. When Cornelius Vanderbilt II built the breakers, his status as one of America's richest men was on full display, with 48 bedrooms, 50-foot ceilings in the Great Hall, baccarat crystal chandeliers, platinum leaf on the walls, and a music room that was built in France, disassembled, and shipped to the States to be reassembled. Set on 11 acres, the house occupying an acre itself, Richard Morris Hunt built the grandest house in Newport, and one of the grandest in the history of the U.S. Arriving guests entering the Great Hall looked directly toward a wall of glass, overlooking the lawn and the sea. The house was inaugurated on August 14, 1895, by the coming-out party of the Vanderbilts' daughter, Gertrude. 300 attended, and the cotillion was led by Gertrude and her partner, Liz Bened Stewart, who was regarded as the best dancer in Newport. Crossways, the grand white-columned mansion, where Mrs. Stuyvesant Fish scandalized turn-of-the-century society with such entertainments as her servants' ball, for which guests dressed up as footmen and scullery maids. Marble House, a neoclassical mansion, began as a birthday present for Alva Vanderbilt in 1888. The home was constructed of 500,000 cubic feet of marble and drew inspiration from the Petit Trianon at Versailles. Marble House was built right next door to Alva's one-time nemesis, Mrs. Astor, who occupied the 62-room Beechwood. More than $2 million had been spent on construction, and another $11 million on decor and interior. During building, Alva had high walls constructed so that no one could see what was going up. Her move was not popular, and the neighbors were in an uproar when it was finally visible, as it was the most palatial house in Newport at the time, and was right on Bellevue Avenue for all to see. They called it a marble house for a marble heart. The home's gold room is considered to be the most opulently decorated room in all of Newport, and was host to many balls and dances. The Chinese tea house on the grounds overlooks the Seaside cliffs. Cliff Walk, a 3.5-mile scenic path, runs along the coastline off Bellevue Avenue, right at the foot of the summer cottages. This public access was troublesome to the residents early on, as it intruded on their privacy. In those days, the public was just as intrigued by these social elite as we are today. So it was decided to sink Cliff Walk by 12 feet or so the walkers couldn't see the houses they were traveling by, only the sea. The Elms may have been modeled after an 18th century French chateau, touting a sunken garden that evokes a Parisian domain, but it was decidedly modern as one of the first houses in America wired for electricity. With the largest ballroom in Newport, Rosecliff was built for entertaining and was home to some of the summer social season's swankiest soirees. Mirroring the extravagance of the Roman Empire, its summer residents spent millions on entertainment for the 8 to 10 weeks of the season. It was not uncommon for the most affluent to set aside $100,000 to $300,000 or more for the season. The ladies who were leaders in society commanded the large number of servants necessary for the upkeep of the cottages. The queens of American society, such as Mrs. Herman Ulrichs, Mrs. Stuyvesant Fish, Mrs. William Backhouse Astor, and Mrs. William K. Vanderbilt, were pace-setters and created a new standard for social entertaining. Each season, a proper Newport hostess, to maintain her social standing, would have to hold 6 dinner parties with 60 guests each, and 2 balls with an invitation list of 600 each. The girls got along fairly well, although they all had very strong and dominating personalities. One of the issues that could create friction was who got the prized men to always be present at their parties. Society in Newport was very much a woman's game. The men who made the money that allowed for all this social climbing and party giving stayed away from it for the most part. They worked in the city during the week and came to Newport for the weekend, via private railroad cars and steam yachts. There were a few male clubs that were off limits to women, as well as yachting, a favorite for many, and the husbands did dutifully show up at some of the dinners and balls. But as for planning and playing the social game, most men simply were not interested, aside from one certain gentleman who made Newport a bona fide hotspot of the Gilded Age. In the 1850s, Ward McAllister, a lawyer, bought a home in the area. McAllister made the place famous for his picnics. An invitation to one of his summer picnics could make or break a hopeful social climber. Guests included New York's most powerful families: Astors, Whitneys, Vanderbilts, Wetmores. They picnicked alongside diplomats, state and local political figures, and even artists. However, McAllister once commented, "Do not for a moment imagine that all were indiscriminately asked to these little fêtes. If you were not in the inner circle, it took the combined efforts of all your friends backing and pushing to procure an invitation for you." These exclusive summer picnics were held at Bayside Farm's rustic white farmhouse, and picturesque livestock in the pastures were rented specifically for the occasion. It created a romantic, out-of-town feeling that seemed like a novelty. Guests feasted on rich delicacies and enjoyed champagne and wine from McAllister's meticulously curated collection. Afterwards, there was dancing in the barn, where a brilliant chandelier hung from the rafters. Between food, decorations, table settings, music, and other essential elements for hosting 140 people, one of McAllister's picnics cost roughly $28,000 in today's money. During the warmer months, McAllister frequently entertained his high-profile guests by the sea. In Gilded Age Newport, even a day at the beach was a prestigious occasion. In the 1890s, newly electrified trolley lines made Easton's Beach accessible to the general public, to the dismay of its better-heeled patrons. Not wanting to associate with the masses, Newport's wealthy claimed a small strip at the far end of Bellevue Avenue as their own and formed the Spouting Rock Beach Association, better known as Bailey's Beach. Mornings were spent at the beach club, where women sat arrayed, listening to the strains of an orchestra. It was maintained by beachmen dressed in white, with rows of bathhouses with initials painted on them identifying their owners. Alva Vanderbilt could be seen carrying a green umbrella into the water with her to protect her fair complexion. It became the most exclusive place in the Newport social scene. If you were invited to a bathing party at Bailey's, you were definitely one of the chosen. But exclusivity does not always equate to higher quality. Bailey's Beach was not a pleasant place to swim. It was small and cramped, and because of its location, was plagued by a heavy growth of seaweed just offshore. The public beach was much larger, more pleasant, and seaweed-free. But if they had even the slightest concern for their reputation, a member of the upper class would not be caught dead there. Everyone in Rhode Island had a much closer relationship with boats and the water during the Gilded Age. Ferries were the transport of the day. With only one small bridge spanning the Saconnet River, Aquidneck Island, on which Newport is located, was largely cut off from the mainland except by sea. But the water wasn't just used for travel. The prestigious New York Yacht Club made regular cruises through Newport, and families and clubs sponsored individual races on Narragansett Bay that were often covered in the New York Times. Ogden Goelet, owner of Ochre Court, and James Gordon Bennett, Jr., were among some of the era who sponsored sailing cups bearing their names. The trophies were made by the best silversmiths of the age, including Tiffany & Co., and the Gorham Manufacturing Company of Providence. The yachts were in the harbor at Newport, often only to pick up their owners, who would then be off with pals and parties on cruises that removed them from the Newport social scene for most of the season. As with any leisure activity, when the elite families of Newport took to the water to enjoy the popular pastime of yachting, they wanted the best. And in Rhode Island, the best meant buying from the Harrishoff Manufacturing Company in Bristol. The biggest names of the Gilded Age were Harrishoff customers, and yachting was as significant a means of displaying your wealth and privilege as coaching or having a magnificent mansion built or racing horses. Tailgating was very much a part of the social and sporting scene during the Gilded Age, and Newport was the home of the first polo club in the United States. It all started in 1876, when New York Herald publisher James Gordon Bennett, Jr. invited a group of high society sportsmen for a polo demonstration at his estate. By the end of the night, a rail car of horses had arrived for the match, and the newfound polo devotees were hooked. The group founded the Westchester Polo Club and based their playing season in Newport, where most had summer residences. The club originally played at Morton Park on Coggeshall Avenue, later establishing formal polo grounds off Ocean Drive. Eventually, the game started to catch on in other cities along the eastern seaboard. The Westchester Polo Club was the first and became a founding member of the United States Polo Association. The club lasted for several generations, but ceased to be active after 1929. Another Bellevue Avenue hotspot was a playground for the city's elite. In 1879, the same James Gordon Bennett, Jr. bet his friend Captain Henry Augustus Candy that he wouldn't ride his polo horse across the porch of the Newport Reading Room, the notoriously stuffy social club where both were guests. Candy raised the bet, riding his horse not only across the porch, but through the building and right out the back door, disturbing members along the way. Their guest privileges revoked, Bennett resolved to open his own social club, and the Newport Casino was born. At least, that's the story that's been passed down through the years. In reality, the businessman was already in talks with architectural firm McKim, Mead & White about constructing a new social club, when he purchased the parcel on Bellevue Avenue in 1879. Construction was completed in just 6 months, and on July 26, 1880, a soft opening was held, with guest admittance by invitation only. 1 week later, on August 2nd, the public was invited to inspect the premises, and more than 3,000 attended. Far from the modern concept of a casino as a gambling institution, originally a casino was a summer house or social club. Likewise, the Newport Casino was a social venue that included both public outdoor spaces and a private club. The horizontal facade on Bellevue Avenue included storefronts, gentlemen's lodging, and a restaurant on the ground floor, with club rooms, reading rooms, and billiards on the second and third floors. Gables, tall chimneys, small windows, and open-air porches completed the architecture. The grounds were designed to include a court tennis facility, bowling alley, and lawn tennis courts. They would have concerts, horse shows, flower shows, and once the automobile entered the scene, car shows. And then there was this new sport that had recently hopped across the pond, called lawn tennis. For its first 34 years, the casino played host to what would eventually become the U.S. Open. The ladies went in the late mornings, dressed to the nines, to sit under their umbrellas and to watch the tennis matches. On other days, the casino hosted mixed doubles club play, with men and women playing together. Fabrics such as linen and wool hid perspiration, and women often played in their corsets and long skirts. In addition to tennis, the club held balls, concerts, and social events in the casino theater. The seats of the theater could be removed, allowing room for dancing. The public, for a small fee, could purchase tickets to stand in the balcony and observe the elite partying down below. Archery, lawn bowling, tea parties, croquet, and squash were all part of the social offerings. Writing 3 days after the opening, the Newport News boasted, "It is doubtful if a more lively place can be found." The daily diversion at Newport was an afternoon drive or coach parade. Every day the ladies, in their horse-drawn carriages, led by footmen, drove down Bellevue Avenue, waving and nodding at one another. It was customary to dress in your best finery for this daily circuit, between wilderness and waves. The ladies got around in a variety of carriages, chosen especially for the occasion. Mrs. Pembroke Jones could be seen in the early hours on the streets in her morning carriage. Jones was from North Carolina and was famous in Newport for her southern dinners. Spending a summer in Newport required the proper wardrobe. There were different dresses for every occasion, 80 to 90 in a season worn only once or twice. From the 1890s up to the 1910s, Vogue extensively covered Newport, focusing on what to wear. In 1896, they reported, "At Newport alone is this summer picture seen at its best, set in residential gorgeousness and environed with the splendors of wealth. One must look for what is smartest and find the models of fashion's latest caprice. The outside world takes delight in these fine leaders and enjoys with pride being their followers. What Newport women do and wear is a law from east to west, north to south. Silk grass lawns are the most chic by far, whether plain, embroidered in white or pink, blue, yellow, mauve, or wrought with marvels of lace incrustations, supplemented by many fine needlework traceries and lavish use of lace edgings. Summer pageantry was never quite so much on display as it was in Gilded Age Newport, with many of the summer cottages saved by the Preservation Society and available for touring. The glittering social life of dinners, sports, and parties are now forever kept alive by the magnificent buildings that once housed them.